With inspiration gained by Giant Grant Games, I took a look back at the Marines from Halo Wars and decided to try and apply his idea to it. But upon realizing that Marines are actually pretty good and not useless, I shelved the idea for an entire year. Seeing Maxon's video about beating Halo Wars without using a unit gave me a massive amount of inspiration, especially since they said it themselves that flamethrowers are terrible. After a whole year, I returned, and instead of Marines, it's flamethrowers, with a little added spice. But first, we need to set some rules. I can only train and use flamethrowers in combat, no build missions, what you're seeing on screen, are to be ignored, turrets are purely defensive, so I think they should be allowed, the Spirit of Fire abilities can be utilized, and lastly, no upgrading my Spirit of Fire abilities and my flamethrowers. How's that for spice? Before we start, you also need to know that flamethrowers are most utterly useless. Their only use is being anti-infantry, which is gonna make some fights in the future real dull. So yeah, that's it. No more dawdling, we're starting this. Relic Approach is easily the simplest mission in the game. Go here and destroy this thingy. Being the first real building mission of the game, you're actually given a lot more freedom than you think. Heck, you're literally given the choice to use Scorpion takes if you want. It's also one of the most open maps, as you're given almost three ways to choose from to approach the enemy. All of them, or both of them, have their pros, and not really any cons. For this, I decided to just go straight down the middle and brute force my way to the objective. While going left or right would let me get some free warthogs, sadly they didn't talk to Consano about getting flamethrowers attached to them, so they're being left behind. The main highlight of the mission would be the landing pads on the left of the map, or the base, I guess, and who cares about that. So long as the methane refineries on the left of the map are intact, every few minutes, Spirit dropships will harass me. But I don't ever worry about them, because I'm too busy on giving this base heat stroke. And after this, I can take this base slot for myself. This makes things considerably easier, and if you need me to say that, then I am sorry for your intelligence. With 7 barracks on my base and the output of only 3, I start to make my proper attack against the Covenant. It's also here that I'd like to say, I'm not doing this on easy or normal difficulty, I'm doing this on heroic. Moving on past Relic Interior because it's no build mission, we're now on Arcadia and we're also immediately in a fight. My objective is to protect as many civilians as I can and defend 2 transport ships. The first part of the mission is no build section, but after Transport 3 attempts to abandon me, I get a base and I finally start to regret my decision of actually doing this. Luckily, I'm not alone in this, as I have the Spartans on my side. Controlled by an AI ally named Red Team, they go around and kinda do their own thing. But one of those things is hijacking vehicles. On a cooldown, a Spartan can take control of any vehicle, which can be amazing. Unless they hijack a Banshee and sit over the water and do absolutely nothing. I've had AFK teammates be more useful than this, and I'm being genuinely serious. My base is nowhere near the transport ships that I need to defend, so I can't rely on turrets to attack air units. Spartan Red Team is my only source of anti-air. The mission actually goes a lot better than I thought it would, but you see that right there? Yeah, it's a problem, and I can barely deal with it. Red Team does assist heavily with taking out air units, but the AI is slow. At the end of the mission is when something appears that gives me conniptions. The Mega Turret is able to bombard anywhere on the map with plasma missiles, but this is also when Lady Luck steps up to the plate and makes the turret hit nothing. Finishing off the mission with 1 ship left, we head on to Outskirts. Thanks, Red Team. Starting off the mission with a quick retreat, I'm given a bunch of units that I can't use. Amazing. After moving them to the back of my new base, I finally admit why this challenge is technically impossible. This isn't StarCraft 2. My units will continue to attack enemies while moving. While an unfunny person would like to stop watching this video purely because of that, I'm making an attempt to try and do my best to keep my non-flamethrowers from attacking anything. Sitting them in the back of my base will do much less damage. Only attacking harassing Banshees and not the main force of what wants to turn me inside out. If you aren't happy with this, then go back to StarCraft, because you can't tell your own units to attack each other in this game. With that out of the way, the main objective is to hold out for 20 minutes for a special surprise that will totally help me out at the end of the mission. This objective on its own is definitely possible, but you see that right there? Yeah, it's a problem, and I can barely deal with it. The Mega Turret makes its return, and this time it actually knows how to aim. Fudge. Clearly the driver is now sober and isn't so keen on me being here, and if I don't take a visit to this thing and permanently put it out of commission, I am eventually going to turn into some brown bread. But doing that? Yeah, you can guess how hard that is. Let's go take a look at this then. I'm not here to waste your time. This takes several attempts and I finally take it down after I lower the difficulty to normal. Unfortunately, I'm not a main character, so I don't have the skills to do this mission on Heroic, but I do return the difficulty after I complete this mission. I'm not even able to actually destroy it until something else happens, and that's the end of the mission. After 20 minutes, Spartan Team Omega, yeah, that Omega team, shows up and I immediately send them to the back of my base. It's with this that the enemy AI becomes near completely inactive. They stop attacking and I'm able to take the rest of the mission at my own pace. Killing the Mega Turret is still a pain, taking this base makes things moderately easier, and attacking the Covenant base is an absolute slog.
This is too easy.
Sure it is. After forever, removing the turrets on the back of the base and microwaving it for a few minutes, I move on to Dome of Light, and for this next section, we're starting off with a clip from my Twitch channel. Spending the first few moments of this mission without flamethrowers is not fun, and is very much a running trend. After sitting here and letting myself get kicked for a few moments, I let out my flamethrowers and get annoyed that my other units are still alive. The objective of the mission is to get 5 Rhino tanks to 5 locations. Rhinos are an artillery unit that I'm not going to talk about because it doesn't matter. Calling one in, this is when I gain access to the Pelican transport ability. Units being transported can't attack enemies, so this is perfect for this run. But after this is when things get all mucky-wucky. This hecking outpost right here is one of the banes of my existence, but I'm not here to waste your time. It takes me a while to get through it. Right after this, Sergeant Forge calls in ODSTs to defend the Rhinos. ODSTs aren't under my control, so they're allowed to stick around. The third objective is in a spot that's disconnected from the rest of the map, and the Pelican is perfect for this. Obviously. So far, it's been manageable, but you see those right there? Yeah, they're a problem, and I can barely deal with them. It's at this point in the mission that I have to admit, again, I wasn't able to do this on Heroic and I had to lower the difficulty to normal. The enemy becomes overwhelming, and I'm not him, so I really can't do this without lowering the difficulty. Interestingly, after lowering the difficulty, the rest of the mission becomes a cakewalk. Pre-placing my units here where one of the objective spawns makes things drastically easier, but if you need me to say that, then I am sorry for your intelligence. It's the only way I was able to take down this base. And that's basically it. Ignore this factory, decimate the enemy base under the shield, and I win. But, wait a minute. Unfortunately, you're forced to use the Spirit of Fire's Mac Cannon here. But only after doing all of this did I find out that you can press escape and Serena will take out everything for you. Yeah, Serena, remember her? I also hope you've been liking the video so far. If you have been liking it, don't click the like button, but instead go and take a visit to the thumbnail artist for this video. And with that, we go on to Scarab. Unfortunately, due to the worst unit ever existing in this mission, this isn't actually possible, but let's talk about what I went through before I hit that brick wall. The objective of Scarab is super unique. There are several nodes scattered around the map that don't need to be destroyed. Each is guarded by a not progressively stronger force of enemies, but enough of that joke. This mission actually is unique, in the fact that there's a giant Scarab looking around the map that will decimate everything it sees. Each node destroyed slows down the speed of the Scarab's head, making it much easier to avoid. But we got several problems, the most prominent of which being my leader ability. Normally, you would use the Mac Cannon for multiple things, destroying the nodes and putting damage on the Scarab. But here's where we run into our first snag with that. Flamethrowers are horrible at putting damage on the Scarab, and standing out in the open as the Scarab is coming around is, admittedly, very menacing and especially annoying. Flamethrowers are also horrible at destroying the nodes, which is what I have to put most of my Mac Blasts on. But you also see that right there? Yeah, it's a problem, and I can't deal with it. After a few minutes, the Scarab will destroy the wall and then destroy my base. I'm able to utilize a sort of bug that includes making a supply pad here repeatedly. That might be the main highlight for why I lost this mission, but in my opinion, something worth more attention are the engineers. Engineers, are the Covenant's healer unit, and are not only flying, which makes flamethrowers useless against them, but they also out-heal a flamer's damage output, but that'll come up later. Right now, even if there weren't engineers healing the Scarab, I don't think I'd even have enough damage to kill it before it breaks my base. Maybe if I had 40 invincible flamethrowers at the start of the mission, and the engineers weren't healing, maybe I'd be able to complete it. But not only do I start the mission with some units already, taking up supply that could be used on flamethrowers, but my flamethrowers aren't invincible, so I guess we're going on to Anders' signal. Elephants are sort of mobile mini-bases that can train infantry. This sounds cool, but for a flamethrowers only run, they're semi-useless, as they have guns which they use to defend themselves. Using the singular elephant I have to train a bunch of flamethrowers, I smash into the enemy and get absolutely pasted. But thanks to Red Team and scripted events, they do all the work for me. Only after the fighting is finished do I actually gain control of them. But this is when things start to get tricky and especially tedious. For the next part of this mission, you're expected to use the Spartans to go and find out what happened to the yellow elephants on the map. Oh, what's that? You didn't notice the yellow on a minimap? I don't know about you, but there's some funky stuff going on over here. A unique trait of the Flood is their ability to take control of your inventory. And this is the thing in the campaign where the Flamethrower shines the most. Infection forms are basically melee units, but Flamethrowers are also basically melee units. Flamers turn infection forms into charred, gross stuff. Charred, gross stuff, yeah. But oh, trust me, viewer, things will get much worse. After rescuing the first elephant, I get access to a base, and the Covenant starts making harassing attacks on me with brutes. But I don't really worry about that, because I'm too busy getting annoyed that flamethrowers aren't actually effective against flood structures. Also to note, up until I got that base, I had one supply pad worth of income. Can you guess how long it took me to rescue the first elephant? I bet you can't. After this fight, I bring this elephant back home, and head on to the mission, the Flood. Yeah, I'm not kidding. This is how the mission goes. You make it up to this beacon, you rescue the elephants, and then you go home. You only lose if one of the elephants breaks. The only close call I did have was when I sent my flamethrowers out in front here, anticipating an attack that would somehow force my elephant to act like a hero and valiantly kill a singular flood form. Other than that, it was a pretty easy mission. Gosh, this bitrate sucks. Now this is when things start to get properly difficult and especially annoying. The objective is to both rescue Red Team and take out the giant Gravemind sitting on the edge of the map. There are several flood colonies around the map which give health to the main Gravemind, and taking them out reduces its health drastically. But sadly, due to this being the flood that I'm fighting, I end up getting extremely annoyed several times before I even rescue Red Team. But it isn't all screaming and crying. Having the elephants from the last mission, I have absolutely no reason to be creating a barracks. This lets me focus on my economy and upgrading. But what am I upgrading, I hear you ask, dear viewer? Yes, thank you for asking. No one asked me what I'm upgrading. The Field Armory allows me to upgrade a small number of things. My unit creation speed, the damage and health of my turrets, my supply capacity, and the movement speed of my inventory. That supply capacity upgrade is especially nice when the Flood has the ability to steal your entire inventory force in mere seconds. I hate my life. There's no dilly-dallying to be done. You can see the gameplay, and you can see how much of a nightmare it is to get over this base spot over here. After this, I suffer through that thing I said at the start of the video. Remember when I mentioned having 7 barracks on my base and the output of only 3? That's because each unit that comes out of the base comes out one by one, and having more than 3 barracks doesn't increase my production at all. In the multiplayer, this is fixed, but not in the campaign, and you can guess how much this slows down the gameplay by. I use this base as a staging ground for my attacks for the rest of the mission. After a few minutes, I start to break the elephants I have with my Carpet Bomb Leader ability to have more supply for flamethrowers. After a few more minutes, I start to attack the Flood, and you can guess how that goes. Fuck! I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This takes forever. There's not even anything to say. You're seeing the gameplay. I save Red Team and airlift them back to my base, after which the hour-long battle to kill the Gravemind begins. Again, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Despite Halo Wars having been the RTS that I grew up on, I didn't actually know that if you just kill all the flood colonies around the map, the Gravemind would die on its own. Obviously this takes forever, especially this colony on the far left side of the map. That was a hassle and a half. But if you pay attention to this next clip, you'll fully realize just how much of a pain this was, and just how satisfying it was to win.
One of the colonies has regenerated, and a large creature has gained strength.
Yes! Yes! Coming down from that victorious high, let's talk about the worst mission in Halo Wars, Shield World. The objective is to clear 3 positions for 3 Pelicans to retrieve 3 platoons. Each is guarded by a giant amount of flood launches, and it's about time I actually elaborate on those. Flood launches are the worst things ever designed, and I wish that was an exaggeration. Either them, or random crits in Thief Launchers 2. When a flood launcher's projectile hits the ground, there's a chance for a flood spore cloud to rise out of it and fly around, rapidly infecting infantry. There's no specific number anywhere talking about the chance, but I'm convinced it's something 10%. You know, I wanted to make a bit about me going on about how much I hate the Flood in this game, but that rant quickly got out of control, and profanities were included, so I decided to cut that out. But if that alone doesn't tell you how much I hate the Flood, I don't know what will. On top of the flood launches being a constant pain in my area, the mission is also timed. But as if you weren't watching the gameplay to see that, right? There's a way I'm able to increase the amount of time I've got in the mission, and that's with the Gremlin. There are large pylons around the map that I consider Gremlin next to extend the time with, but we've got a problem with that. While one of the 4 pylons is next to my base, the rest are in the other corners of the map. Not having the Pelican transport ability in this mission, it's extremely hard to move my Gremlin across the map to one of them without damaging something on the way there. While this mission is definitely possible, the high amount of flood launches with the time limit turns this into a nightmare. Good RNG is the only way to win this mission, as that supposed 10% chance for a spore cloud appearing from the launcher is the big thing holding us back. The only spot I'm ever able to semi-reliably clear is the third evac. When you clear a spot, a unit from the platoon that was stranded sticks around on the field. Charlie evac gives me red team, which sadly still haven't decided to give up their weapons for the superior tool, come on guys. So I can't use them to start a steamroll of the rest of the map. With nothing else to be said here, we're moving on to cleansing. Oh cool, something else happened to my microphone while I wasn't recording, and now I sound different to how I did earlier. I love it when this happens. One might think that this mission is impossible, but no, it is certainly possible. It just takes a lot of time. The Spirit of Fire's hull has been infested with the Flood, and it's my job to roleplay a janitor and clean it all off. When a Flood structure's health is reduced to 0, it doesn't actually die. It becomes dormant, and will slowly revive over time. But in this mission, there's a way to permanently remove the Flood, and it's with that. And that is actually a problem that I can deal with. Every few minutes, the Spirit of Fire will fly through a giant ring, damaging everything that isn't inside these airlocks. But more importantly, removing Flood structures that are dormant or have really low health. With this, you can already guess the loop of the mission. Go out and take down Flood structures, make sure they don't regenerate before the ring appears, retreat into the airlocks before my units are engulfed by it, and repeat. We also have the first appearance of the Forerunner on this mission. Forerunner Sentinels go around and try to cleanse the ship of Flood. They're one of my only sources of damage for the Flood structures that are on the sides of the ship. I'm given the Carpet Bomb ability again, and can use this to damage them. But that Carpet Bomb ability goes on cooldown for a few minutes, meaning that I have to rely a little bit on the Sentinels for damage on those structures. But other than that, the mission is really easy. My only loss condition is if I lose all my airlocks, which I obviously make sure doesn't happen. A few minutes into the mission, I'm given 2 Vulture gunships by Captain Cutter. Unfortunately, they don't have flamethrowers attached to them, so they're sitting in timeout. But yeah, that's about it for this mission. Being able to sit my units inside of the airlocks helps me put a lot of focus on my flamers, since units that are inside of them can't damage anything. So, with the Spirit of Fire sparkly clean, we're heading on to repairs. One might think that this mission is impossible, but no, it's very close to impossible. The Spirit of Fire's hull has been infested with the Covenant, and it's my job to roleplay an engineer and repair the engine. For this mission, we're given the Cyclops, a unit that can heal other mechanical units and buildings. Up until now, I had to use resources to heal my units, but now I have this thing that doesn't even heal flamethrowers. Woohoo! Honestly, the mission is really difficult. I have to reduce the difficulty from heroic to easy to be able to do this, as the enemy is just insanely overwhelming for my poor flamethrowers. Speaking of which, despite starting the mission with some not flamethrowers, I'm still able to use the airlocks to keep the focus on my flamers, so that's a win in its own right. On the outside of the map, there are mega turrets which target random parts of the ship, which can mess you up if you're unlucky, but thank gosh for Lady Luck making a return. Also thankfully, Cyclopses are melee units, making it really easy to just walk them over to the engine and repair it without the worry of them damaging anything on the way there. It's honestly a pretty uneventful mission. Doing this on the other difficulties was the embodiment of walking into a tidal wave as a toddler. But seeing as this section is so short, I'm actually going to discuss something I completely forgot to talk about at the start of the video. Skulls. If you've ever played any Halo game before, you'd know that skulls are modifiers that you can apply to your game to make them easier or harder. But since Halo Wars is very separate from the mainline Halo games, I'd have to bet that most of the people watching this video don't actually know what some of them do. But it doesn't matter because I'm not using them. Not only are skulls just incredibly unfaithful to the challenge of flamethrowers only, some of them make missions quite trivial depending on which ones you have active. The skull named Sugar Cookies increases your unit's life by 50%. You don't need me to say that's pretty powerful. The downside to activating skulls is that your score decreases, but with how long it takes for me to complete most of these missions, I'm gonna have a low score anyway, so who cares? After the core is repaired, I'm too tired to keep my Cyclopses from murdering these 2 grunt squads because it's 2:30 AM, and we head on to Beachhead. The objective of Beachhead is super unique. There are 4 Covenant bases on the map that I need to claim. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger force of enemies. The start of the mission is a no-build section. It's from here that I'm actually given a choice of going 2 ways. I can either choose the safer way and get a base on the corner of the map, or I can take the riskier way that's more centered on the map. I took the easier way because I was scared of shade turrets, and the Flood are a real nuisance on this mission. The Flood have access to the Bomber Carrier form, an anomalously floating creature that lays eggs that hatch into Flood infection forms. Being flying, my flamethrowers can't attack them, which is just great really, I love this challenge. Finally getting a base and getting into flamethrower production, these guys just ominously float in and float away for some reason. Nice! Not nice! What the cripe? Why were there 3 of them? Why are they turning around?
They just went back to the shadows.
And now you can just tell how bad I am at reading off of a script. My good old reliable strategy of amassing flamethrowers and tossing them to the grinder thankfully still works, but there's something else that really peeves me off with this mission. Once you gain a base, occasionally banshees will patrol around the map and harass you. Like on previous missions, having my Spartans in the back, they take all the Banshees flying by, and there's nothing I can do about this. This also happened on Dome of Light, but I forgot to say it, so whoops. The reason I'm not sending any units off to be killed is because they do a substantial amount of damage before they do fall, Spartans especially, considering they can be revived when they do go down. The first base was designed to be claimed by the forces that you're given during the no build section, meaning that everything from here on is a nightmare. Taking the base in the center is a grueling process, since over time, forces build up in every base. If I had taken this base at the start, it would have been much easier. I make constant use of the Pelican transport ability to quickly hot drop my flamers into the fight. A Pelican holds a maximum of 6 infantry units at a time, so every moment I'm switching between my base and the fight to send them over. During the fight to take this base, I start to suffer a heart attack as I watch an engineer come over and try to heal the base. Thankfully, I'm able to outdamage one singular engineer, but when there's two, a problem arises. It doesn't help that the Flood is also here, and some Banshees too. After a few moments of getting my head kicked in, the engineers fly away and I focus damage on the base. I don't know what made the engineers stop healing the base, but I wasn't going to argue. After the base is down, I'm left with the Banshees and oof, owie do they hurt. I have to sit here and eat plasma for a few minutes as turrets come online on my new base. Isn't this fun? After this is when things get especially tricky for this mission. You're expected to use one of your 3 Spartans to hijack this here Scarab after the Covenant abandoned it, but can you guess what we aren't allowed to use? I was already playing with a disadvantage this entire time, but this is just kicking me while I'm down. Past the Scarab is this base here. There's probably a joke being made about Banshees, but I can't think of it, and I'm also just really annoyed at this point. Every building on a base provides more health to the central structure, so taking my time and slowly dismantling a base building by building makes this easier for me, while denying the enemy the ability to create units. At the same time, I'm just a sitting duck for the Banshees. Thankfully, the engineer's AI seems to have taken a swan dive into the Flood Sea, because apparently it's just gone and doesn't return until later. You wouldn't believe it, but I'm actually able to destroy this base. Now, sure, I can't take it, and the Covenant eventually end up retaking it, but I feel really good in myself that I was able to break it in the first place. Albeit with the engineer's AI on the fritz. Getting back to it, past this base is a teleporter taking me up to a giant cliff up here. You see this kind of verticality in StarCraft 2? I didn't think so. Thankfully, I'm not an idiot and don't decide to send all my flamers through the teleporter like this for long. Using the Pelican transport ability once again, my flamer, holy fudge! An actual functioning Scarab surrounded by honor guards with Banshees behind me, this would be a losing battle, obviously, and it is, at first at least. Thankfully, honor guards are considered a special type of infantry, making them fall easily to my flamethrowers. But more importantly than that, the Scarab is not having such a good time. I'm not gonna act like I made an epic play and was awesome and stuff. I abused the fact that the Scarab broke to kill it. That isn't very interesting, and it isn't really cool, but you'd abuse it too if you saw the chance, don't deny it. Taking down the last Covenant base is actually quite nice. Sure, the Flood make another appearance, but with another broken engineer and the awesome soundtrack to accompany, this is actually really pleasant. But unfortunately, my problems aren't solved just yet. A bunch of honor guards are dropped down on top of me, and once again, I have to show them how the sun feels. It's so interesting to me that the engineers are able to heal themselves, but for some reason, won't heal the base they're meant to defend. Speaking of bases that they have to defend, finally approaching the end of this mission, and finally admitting why this mission is actually impossible, the engineer's AI has returned, and they really hate me. The Banshees never left, and they are utterly melting my flamethrowers like they are nothing. It was heartbreaking, I'll say, getting through the entire mission and being met with this brick wall. But I wasn't gonna sit down and sulk. I knew Halo Wars was impossible to beat with only flamethrowers, and I'm here to tell you specifically what missions can't be beaten. And with that, we're heading on to Reactor. Starting this off, we've got to bring this here Reactor all the way up to this here spot, while being met with a whole bunch of Covenant along the way. Once again, I've got to reduce the difficulty down a bit to be able to do this. Other than the main gimmick of this mission including a unit that isn't a flamethrower, there isn't too much to write home about. While this first base may look easy, and, it is, it's only because I had to reduce the difficulty down to normal. The one thing that is very much worthy of being written home about is that both on heroic and legendary difficulty, this base will eventually create a Scarab that will turn me inside out. I obviously don't have the skills to take it down before that Scarab is created, and that Scarab also has Wraith backup, meaning that's actually impossible to abuse the bug from earlier. Pushing up the mountain, trying my best to ignore the horrible screeches of the Flood and skipping past this base, I find out that what I'm dealing with up ahead isn't actually that bad, and I decide to take out the final base a bit early. Unsurprisingly, it takes a really long time to cook this base. Slowly dismantling it one building at a time, one turret at a time, I really want to go to bed. After grabbing control of the spot, I realized that I wouldn't actually have to destroy the final Covenant base. Just so long as I can draw attention of the turrets away from the elephant, it can squeeze on past without having to shoot once. And, well, yeah, that's exactly what I do. That isn't scary. I'm not able to keep the elephant from attacking anything on the way up the mountain, mainly due to air units being a pain, but I do make sure that the elephant doesn't have a chance to actually kill any of them. While that in itself is a bit of a shame, I'm actually thankful that I'm able to complete this mission at all. Admittedly, it kinda turns into a pushover once I lower the difficulty. The disconnect from normal and heroic is honestly wild, as with heroic difficulty, the first Covenant base that you fight really loves their Wraith tanks. But enough talking about this level, because we're on to the last one, Escape. There's no dilly-dallying to be done, because I have units that aren't flamethrowers again. While these guys slap my base, I'm gonna explain everything. The objective is to open a giant hole in the ground so that the Spirit of Fire can escape through it. In order to accomplish such a goal, I have to go to these interlocks on each edge of the portal. But it isn't as easy as it seems, as when one interlock is activated, the interlock on the other side of the hole must be activated, as they're all paired. Those two grids will disappear and the portal will open partially. Do this 3 times, and it's done. But here's the kicker. I can't just activate them as soon as I get a unit near them, as the interlock simply won't work unless there's no enemy forces nearby. Finally burning these 2 guys and defending my base, I start heading upwards and grab a second base. On the portal is a Scarab which roams around and holds position every so often. After creating my second base, this is when things really take off. The pelicans being the things taking off. Due to there being a time limit, I don't entirely wait for the Scarab to pass by this area and decide to just ice it and fly past. Oh yeah, this being the last mission, I'm given access to all 3 litter abilities, but I restrict myself to using only the Ice Bomb. Flying past the Scarab, and narrowly avoiding being shot down, I kill all the flood around this interlock and activate it. But forgetting about where the Scarab is, I activate it before the Scarab is on top of one of those 2 grids, missing out on an easy kill. You don't need me to say that this was pretty silly. Thankfully, it has a set path to follow, meaning that it doesn't stick around and be my base. But you can guess how much of a shock it was to poor little old me. After letting the Scarab pass and cooking these 2 jackals who are somehow outside the range of my turrets, I start to grab the interlock in between my 2 bases. Ferrying my flamethrowers quickly across the giant center of the map, my only hope is overwhelming the Covenant forces here and clearing enough room on the interlock to grab it. And I fail! Yeah, this attempt is a complete failure, but you'd be a fool to think that this would dissuade me from believing that I can do this. Instead of approaching this interlock again, I decide to leave it for last and start moving to the left of my second base. On this part of the map, the Flood are, very territorial, especially their flyers that act as a super massive nuisance. And for some reason, the Covenant try to make a base here, don't ask me, but I end up having to lure the flyers away and have one flamer run underneath them and back to the interlock to grab it. Directly after, I create another force of flamethrowers to the left of my main base and begin to ferry them to the interlock sitting in front of the Covenant base here. This is actually a super quick ordeal, as for some reason, even though there's a pair of hunters sitting directly next to the lock, I can still activate it. And then we're on to the last 2 interlocks. I grab the interlock in between my 2 bases again and split my forces into 2 giant groups. Using the Pelican ability on one before the other, it allows 2 Pelicans to reach the destination at the same time. While this guy makes an appearance again, I almost completely ignore him. Because as he's walking by, I grab the interlock and can finally say that it is not possible to beat Halo Wars with flamethrowers only. Thanks for watching, I'm going to bed.